Today we're going to work with voice, author's purpose, and mood when it comes to poetry. So let's start with voice. Voice is the speaker in a poem. Now the speaker can be the poet himself or a character that they created for the poem. Now there can only be one speaker, or sometimes in the poem you may see many speakers. So when we look at the poet as a speaker, usually it's a human character in the poem as a speaker, but you can also have an object, an animal, or more than one. But whoever it's going to be, whatever it's going to be, they are going to be the voice. So let's take a look at some examples of the poet as the speaker, or maybe perhaps a first-person point of view as speaker. Here's Christina Rossetti's The Wind. Who has seen the wind? Neither I nor you. But when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing through. Who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the trees bow down their heads, the wind is passing by. So here we can say either it's a first-person point of view or more like the poet themselves are the speaker. Because in this poem, the poet themselves speaks of their feelings about the power of the wind. Another one about the poet as the speaker. This is Frank Ash's The Sugar Lady. There is an old lady who lives down the hall, wrinkled and gray and toothless and small. At 7 already she's up, going from door to door with a cup. Do you have any sugar, she asks, although she's got more than you. Do you have any sugar, she asks, hoping you'll talk for a minute or two. So in this poem, the poet again is the voice, and the poet tells a story about a lonely old woman hoping to talk. And again, we're going to see first-person point of view, but we have this time the poet kind of speaking from all of our points of view. But this is still the poet as the speaker. Christina Rossetti's Clouds. White sheep on a blue hill. When the wind stops, you all stand still. When the wind blows, you walk away slow. White sheep, where do you go? So we don't see a first-person point of view here, but we still have the poet being the speaker. The poet is kind of instructing us, being our every poet, being everyone here. And of course, in this poem, the poet is speaking to the clouds, something that can't answer back. And so she uses a metaphor when she calls the clouds white sheep. Well, what if we move away from the voice as the poet as the speaker and use a human character as a speaker themselves? So we no longer have the poet speaking directly to us. They've now created a character. And here's Jean Condorcet's For Keeps. We had a tug of war today, old March Wind and I. He tried to steal my new red kite that Daddy helped me fly. He huffed and puffed. I pulled so hard and held that string so tight. Old March Wind gave up at last and let me keep my kite. Now, in this poem, the voice is that of a child flying a kite on a windy day. The child being a character in the poem is the one that is telling us the poem. So therefore, now we have a human character as a speaker. We can also just have objects speaking to us because we can have fiction in our poems. We can have a character being an object, being an animal. They don't have to be human. So here is April Halpern Whalen's Crayon Dance. The cardboard ceiling lifts, pick me, I pray. The fingers do. They choose me, sky blue. Hurrah, hooray. Now in this poem, the voice is that of the sky blue crayon, happy to be picked by the artist. The crayon is the character in the poem, and therefore the crayon is the speaker. We can have animals as speakers as well. This is Marilyn Singer's Turtle in July. Heavy, hot hangs, thick, sticky, icky, but I lie, nose high. Cool pool, no fool, a turtle in July. Now in this poem, the voice is that of a turtle trying to keep cool on a hot July day. We can feel the slowness of a turtle. We can feel the heat that he's feeling underneath that shell. The turtle is definitely the character in the poem. The turtle is the animal as the speaker for the poem. Can there be more than one speaker in a poem? Absolutely. So let's check out Beverly McLaughlin's I Talk with the Moon. I talk with the moon, said the owl, while she lingers over my tree. I talk with the moon, said the owl, and the night belongs to me. I talk with the sun, said the wren, as soon as he starts to shine. I talk with the sun, said the wren, and the day is mine. So we have two different voices in this poem. The first stanza is that of the nighttime owl, and the second stanza is that of the daytime wren. So we do have two very similar voices here. We do have two birds, so we have animals as speakers, but we have two speakers for your voice. Can we get more than two speakers? Yes, you can have a plethora of voices. If you wanted to do one voice per stanza and have 20 stanzas, you could technically have 20 speakers. So let's check out Monster Mothers by Florence Perry Hyde. When monster mothers get together, they brag about their babies. The other day, I heard one say, "He's got his very first fang today." Mine is ugly. Mine is mean. Mine is turning nice and green. Mine's as scaly as a fish. Mine is sort of yellowish. Mine breathes fire and smoke and such. Mine has skin you'd hate to touch. So in this poem, there are many voices. There could be perhaps the three voices of the three monsters that I have pictured. There could be as many as about 8 or 9 of them here, because we have all of these different braggings. There could just be 2 here that are talking back and forth, but we do know there are multiple speakers here, because these are speakers being monster mothers and describing their babies, almost kind of bragging to one another, but certainly there's multiple, at least 3 or more here, as we've got the different colors going on. So yes, you could make up your characters as speakers, and you can have multiple speakers. So let's continue on away from voice into author's purpose. Now, a lot of times when we see the author as a speaker for your voice, you could probably also pick up the author's purpose fairly easily. But sometimes when you have an object as a speaker, or you've got multiple speakers, they're not as clear. But we do have 5 different parts that we can use for author's purpose in poetry. So what could their purpose be? Well, poems are supposed to be sharing feelings, and so that might be the main purpose of the author. So maybe they're sharing feelings of joy, sadness, anger, maybe fear, maybe loneliness. It could be just a straight narrative poem. They might be retelling a story. They could be telling a fictitious a play, or they could be telling us a real event. They could be sending a message. Maybe perhaps there's some sort of theme. They're trying to instruct us. They're trying to teach us something. They could perhaps just be humorous. They might be using a lot of onomatopoeia, a lot of wordplay, just to write something funny. And then they could just simply be providing descriptions, where they might be deciding to write a descriptive poem on a person or an object, or trying to take a concept such as a specific feeling. Maybe they're describing what sadness looks like. Maybe they're describing what joy looks like. Now, description is important in all poems, but the focus of some poems is the description itself rather than any of the 4 above. Sometimes description is all that they are doing. So let's check out some of the author's purpose. Let's start with simple sharing of feelings. This is the one that the poets most likely will probably be doing. Dorothy Aldis's When I Was Lost. Underneath my belt, my stomach was a stone. Sinking was the way I felt, and hollow and alone. So we can already tell it's a very negative feeling that we have going on. She's talking about feeling hollow and alone. I believe the author's purpose here is to share her feelings about being lost, being scared. She's alone, and she does not want to be alone. And of course, we got the word lost in the title, so she's probably feeling lost, alone, and a little bit fearful. Well, what about telling a story? Well, let's check out Shel Silverstein's Jimmy Jet and learn the story of Jimmy Jet. I'll tell you the story of Jimmy Jet, and you know what I tell you is true. He loved to watch his TV set, almost as much as you. He watched all day, he watched all night, till he grew pale and lean. From the early show to the late, late show, and all the shows in between. He watched till his eyes were frozen wide, and his bottom grew into his chair, and his chin turned into a tuning dial, and antenna grew out of his hair. And his brains turned into TV tubes, and his face into a TV screen. And two knobs saying vert and horizon grew where his ears had been. And he grew a plug that looked like a tail, so we plugged in little Jim. And now, instead of him watching TV, we all sit around and watch him. So we have this author's purpose telling the story of Jimmy Jett, the boy who watched too much television. Now, what if the author's purpose is to send a message? What if they're trying to teach us some sort of lesson or some sort of theme? Well, Patricia and Frederick McKissick have shared the adventure for us. Pages and pages, a seesaw of ideas. Share the adventure. Fiction, nonfiction, door to our past and future, swinging back and forth. Wham! The book slams shut. But we read it together, with our minds open. Well, here we have the theme of reading should be shared, as it says to share the adventure, so they're probably reading an adventure story here. But the author's purpose is to send a serious message. You should be helping others learn to read, learn to enjoy reading, opening your minds to new ideas, to new places, to new adventures. And so reading is an adventure that can be shared, is likely our message here with the title, Share the Adventure. What if they are just trying to be humorous with their author's purpose? Well, let's check out Colin West's insides. I'm very grateful to my skin for keeping all my insides in. I do so hate to think about what I would look like inside out. Well, we're trying to write about the purpose of skin here, but we're not trying to teach. This is not a biology lesson, but it is supposed to be something that you can kind of laugh at, like, yeah, I do so hate to think about what I'd look like without my skin or look like inside out. But we're not trying to do a biology lesson. We're trying to make this humorous, something that, you would have wrote for a small child, something that you would do as a quick joke. Sometimes the author's purpose in a poem is just to give a lighter sense, something almost comical, something to give a little bit of a smile. And sometimes your author's purpose is simply to be descriptive. It's not telling a story, you're not learning a lesson. It might give you a smile, but it's not specifically trying to be humorous. They are literally just putting description down. Me by Carla Kuskin. My nose is blue. My teeth are green. My face is like a soup tureen. I look just like a lima bean. I'm very, very lovely. My feet are far too short and long. My hands are left and right and wrong. My voice is like the hippo's song. I'm very, 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 very lovely. So, of course, here now we have somebody describing their appearance. It's a very strange appearance, one that we wouldn't be used to seeing. And, of course, at the very end, we've got somebody saying, I'm very lovely, and they put a question mark at the end. This isn't some sort of theme where we're supposed to be figuring out, the topic of what a person should or should not look like. This is just simply a description, somebody who's decided that they want to use words in an effort to describe or create some sort of mental picture. Let's try descriptive again. The Vacuum Cleaner by D. Lilligard. Roars over carpet, zigzag zips, sucking up fuzz through metal lips. I mean, it can't be any clearer. We're reading about the description of a vacuum cleaner. We've got some onomatopoeia and some wordplay. They're not teaching us how to use a vacuum cleaner or what the purpose of a vacuum cleaner is for. We simply have a description of a vacuum cleaner. Again, for be descriptive, and a lot of times we're looking for sharing feelings in poetry, but being descriptive is a really important topic when it comes to poetry. We have Beetles by Ethel Jacobson. Emerald, ruby, turquoise blue. Beetles come in every hue. Beetles that pinch or sting or bite. Tiger beetles that claw and fight. Beetles whose burnished armor gleams. Whirligig beetles that dance on streams. Antlered beetles in stag-like poses. Beetles that smell and nod like roses. Others that click like castanets. That dig or swim or zoom like jets. Hard as coffee beans, brown as leather, or shimmering bright as a peacock feather. The purpose here is to describe a variety of beetles. We're not, again, learning about the different types. We're not learning about what they eat or what they do. We're not even really looking at much feelings about them, except for, sometimes maybe perhaps they're smelly. But mostly what we're looking at here is this sense of description, describing what different beetles look like, sound like, using our five senses, giving a description of beetles. Understanding by Myra Cohn Livingston. Sun and rain and wind and storms and thunder go together. There has to be a bit of each to make the weather. So we're describing the concept of weather here. We're not describing what weather is. We're not telling you or teaching you about what rain or why we have thunder and lightning. None of that is being described. What we are describing is what the word weather would be. And lastly, let's take a look at mood in poems. Sometimes we look at the idea of author's purpose to figure out why the poem is what it is. Certainly we want to know the voice because we want to know who the speaker is. But the mood, the atmosphere, the emotion in the poem that is created by the poet comes from the reader. Now, the poet is going to try and create moods, but the mood is what the reader gets from what the poet has been writing, and it takes everything into account. Not only the wording and the context, the meter, the rhythm, the rhyme, the author's purpose, the voice, everything comes together to create the mood, because the mood is the atmosphere or the emotion in the poem created by the poet. Now, it can be any myriad of moods: happy, angry, silly, sad, excited, maybe fearful, maybe just thoughtful. You're learning something. Now, the poet uses words and images in order to create this mood, and the author's purpose helps to determine the mood. So let's check out one of them, called Barefoot Days by Rachel Field. We're going to try and look for clues that will help us determine the mood. In the morning, very early, that's the time I love to go. Barefoot where the fern grows curly and grass is cool between each toe. On a summer morning, on a summer morning. That is when the birds go by, up the sunny slopes of air, and each rose has a butterfly or a golden bee to wear. And I am glad in every toe, such a summer morning. Oh, such a summer morning. Well, not all of us might agree to have some barefoot days, but a lot of us can probably have the same feeling on a summer morning going barefoot into a nice grassy part of land. And so when we look at the mood in this poem, the words that we are using make a positive, very happy mood. In the morning, that's the time I love to go. So we have this very positive start. And then when we talk about barefoot into the grass, on a summer morning, on a summer morning, we do have this sense of happiness, this sense of joy, this sense of delight. And we have this beautiful sunshiny kind of scene in the second stanza. The birds are flying, there's sunny slopes of air, there's a rose with butterflies and bees. But we have the word love in stanza 1, and I am glad in stanza 2. So the poem is certainly happy. Well, now we have Mad Song by Myra Cohn Livingston. Perhaps we can already kind of guess at what the mood is, but let's take each line at a time. I shut my door to keep you out. Won't do no good to stand and shout. Won't listen to a thing you say. Just time you took yourself away. I lock my door to keep me here until I'm sure you disappear. All right, well, we know because of the word mad that they're probably very angry, they're upset, they're mad. But we were looking for the clues in the poem that we can use to determine the mood, because a lot of times when we have the rhythm and the rhyme that we have in poems such as Mad Song, people have a tendency to think the poems must be positive. When we have the words out and shout and door and good, having these very rhyming like sequences, the very metered, very simple words that we have, I shut my door to keep you out. A lot of times people kind of like that sense. It's very comforting. But this is not a comfortable mood. So what clues in the poem can we use to determine the mood? The contents. I shut my door to keep you out. We don't want to be anywhere near you. And maybe he's talking to the reader themselves. Won't do no good to stand and shout. Won't listen to a thing you say. It sounds like we're in the middle of an argument with somebody here. And once again, they ask us as the reader to leave. Just time you took yourself away. So it's the content itself that sets up the mood. All right, well, let's check out the mood for poem. Not exactly telling us any sort of clues, but poem by Langston Hughes. I loved my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends, soft as it began. I loved my friend. Well, usually when we look at the sense of content and I see the word loved once, now, and twice, and the word loved usually has a very positive connotation. So one would think instantly, well, this must be a happy poem because we saw the word love in a few poems back. But you have to take everything into context. I loved my friend, he went away from me. If you love someone, you probably want to be nearby them. And so when they go away, already there's this sense of loss. And the person who is writing, our speaker here, probably the poet, says, there's nothing more to say, the poem ends. Your poet is sad. They loved their friend, they've gone away, they don't have anything more to say. This is a sense of loss, this is a sense of sadness. Something Is There by Lillian Moore has a different mood for us. Something is there on the stair, coming down, stepping with care, coming down, slinkety sly. Something is coming and wants to get by. So again, we have very strict rhythm and rhymes, and we actually have a bit of a concrete poem here where we actually do have the physical set of steps being set into the poem's writing itself. So we do have very, very straightforward rhythm and rhyme that gives us this sense of wanting, this sense of wondering where the end is. And the end probably gives you a bit of what your mood is. Something is coming and wants to get by. Well, what is that something? We have no idea what that something is, and something is coming and they're getting closer and closer. Perhaps the mood in this poem is fearful, perhaps the mood in this poem is tense, maybe they're stressed. It certainly is not a positive mood. But my clues would of fearfulness or something is getting close and we have this sense of tension is something is there and something is coming and wants to get by. We don't know what that something is, but they're very close to us. So there's this sense of tenseness, this sense of stress, this sense of fear. Well, the next one is called Joyful, so let's see if we can figure out what the mood is. Joyful by Rose Burgunder. A summer day is full of ease, a bank is full of money. Our lilac bush is full of bees, and I am full of honey. Well, I have a feeling this mood is happy because of the word joyful, but we've also picked things that most people tend to enjoy. A summer day being full of ease. People obviously enjoy that. A bank is full of money. People have a tendency to want more money than not. Our lilac bush is full of bees. Now, some people love bees, some people do not. Some people might like the smell of a lilac bush, some people might find it too strong. But because we have this lilac bush being full of bees and I am full of honey, our speaker is obviously quite happy that there is bees that are helping the lilac bushes bloom because he is getting honey from the situation. So the mood is definitely happy and joyful. A summer day full of ease, lots of money, lots of honey. This particular speakers got everything they could wish for on this day. Let's check out Foghorns by Lillian Moore. The foghorns moaned in the bay last night, so sad, so deep. I thought I heard the city crying in its sleep. Again, when people read poems that have a very strict meter or very strict end rhyme, they have a tendency to think there's going to be some sort of positive mood. And we do have a very strict meter and very strict rhyme in here. But look at the words that are being used. The foghorns moaned, so sad. The city was crying. It's a sad mood in this poem. The clues that we can determine, once again, we're just continually looking at the words themselves. What words are being used to reflect the mood? Another mood one called Magic Landscape by Joyce Carol Thomas. Shall I draw a magic landscape? In the genius of my fingers I hold the seeds. Can I grow a painting like a flower? Can I sculpture a future without weeds? So this poem is attempting to kind of teach us a bit of a theme, but when we look at the sense of mood, we have a lot of questions going on. What should I draw? Should I draw a magical landscape? Can I grow a painting like a flower? Can I sculpture a future without weeds? We're talking about what we should paint, and we keep questioning, should I paint this? Should I paint that? Should I paint this? The mood is quite thoughtful, maybe perhaps even questioning. We can draw whatever it is we want, and we haven't made the decision yet. So we do have a bit of a positive one here because there's this sense of freedom. I can draw whatever I want. But it's still very thoughtful because we haven't made the decision yet. What should I draw? So what do we do in order to read for meaning? Well, there's several things you need to worry about when it comes to reading for poems. You should certainly be asking questions as you read. First of all, check out the title if there is one, because titles will provide clues. Most often, more than not, poets do write titles for their stories, but even if they don't, the title will be the first line of the poem, and that will provide a clue about the topic, the mood, the speaker, maybe even perhaps the author's purpose. Did they choose a fast rhythm or slow? Is it evident as to why? Perhaps if we write a poem about a turtle, we're going to notice a slower rhythm. If you're trying to create tension because something is coming down the stairs towards you, they might decide to use a faster rhythm. The sound devices, are we using onomatopoeia? Are we using word puns or word plays? What effects do they have in order for you to feel what is going on in the particular poem? Imagery, the reason why the poets are writing poetry and not, say, prose or writing a script for a play or a TV show, they want to make a picture in your mind, and so they're very carefully choosing very few words in order to create those pictures. Imagery is very important when it comes to poetry because poets don't use as many words in order to create that picture. The figures of speech, what do they tell you about that particular subject? What do they tell you about the speaker of the poem? And then, of course, the speaker of the poem is the voice. Is it the poet speaking? Is it a character, maybe perhaps an object or an animal speaking? Is there one voice or is there several voices in the poem? What is the author's purpose for the poem? Are they attempting to teach you something, sending some sort of message? Are they simply sharing feelings like a classical poem should? Are they attempting to tell you a narrative? Is it a narrative poem, maybe a lyrical poem trying to tell a story? Are they just trying to be comical and funny? Is it just short and sweet, almost like a joke? Or are they being descriptive? There really is no message, there's no story being told. They're describing something so you're getting the image in your mind. The mood, what kind of mood has been set for you? A lot of times you want to look at the content, the words that are being used, but we could also use the idea of the rhythm and the sound devices that might also set up whether or not it's happy, sad, angry, thoughtful. And then lastly, if it is a narrative story, what's happening in the poem? Is there a plot line that you should be following along with? Now remember, to make meaning, readers must make connections and tap into their background knowledge and prior experiences as they read. That's going to help you figure out all of these different parts for the poetry in order to read for meaning. Well, thanks so much for stopping by, guys. If you like my video, please don't hesitate to comment, maybe hopefully even subscribe. If you want to check out some of my other videos, I've got several others on poetry as well. Thanks for stopping by at the channel.